Hey guys, it's Nikki again. How's it going? Do you know what holiday we're celebrating this weekend? It's Labor Day, right? When you think of Labor Day, what comes to your mind? For lots of people, it means it's the last long weekend of the summer. Maybe a picnic, a barbecue, a parade. Maybe it signals the season change or that football's gonna start. There's lots of things that come with Labor Day, and I love Labor Day. But like many other holidays, we sometimes enjoy the day off from work or school, and we've kind of lost sight of what it originally was created to celebrate. Labor Day was created to honor and celebrate the physical, social, and economic achievements of American workers. Essentially, it was intended to be an annual national tribute to the contributions that workers have made to the strength, prosperity, and well-being of our country. During the Industrial Revolution in particular, American workers built a strong nation with infrastructure like railways and dams and roads and bridges, while the rich people who funded the projects and the powerful businessmen and politicians often got the credit for these projects. It was the workers that turned these great men's visions into reality. And so, the first Labor Day was celebrated on Tuesday, September the 5th, 1882 in New York City. It was organized by several labor unions that came together to work towards better working conditions for those laborers. The second Labor Day followed the next year on September the 5th, 1883. Labor Day wasn't part of a 3-day weekend until 1884, when the first Monday of September was officially selected as the holiday's date. And that's when they started encouraging other cities and states to honor workers as well. From 1885 to 1894, 32 states passed bills to adopt a day to honor workers. And in 1894, Congress officially established the first Monday of September as a legal national Labor Day holiday. And here we are 126 years later, coming up on Labor Day weekend. Work is a good thing. It's a gift that God gave us, and it's the means by which we provide for our families and sustain our life. And it's also a good thing to actively celebrate and honor workers, as well as take a much-needed respite from work that this holiday provides. The parable that we're going to be studying this morning just happens to be about laborers, about workers, day laborers who were hired to work in a vineyard. We find our story in Matthew chapter 20. But first, I want to play a game with you guys. We're going to call it the opposite game. So your job is to do the opposite of what I tell you to do. I'm going to give you an action, and you at home figure out what the opposite is of what I'm telling you to do. Okay, you ready? Here's the first one. Frown. Did you smile? Awesome. Here's your next one. Sit down. Did you do the opposite and stand up? Here's another one. Raise your left hand. Did you raise your right hand? Now it's going to get a little bit harder. Are you ready? Sit down and whisper goodbye. Did you stand up and shout hello? Good job. How about this one? Touch your left foot with your right hand. Did you touch your right hand with your left foot? There's a lot of ways that we could have done that one, right? So the reason we played the opposite game today is because we're going to be talking about opposites a little bit in our parable. In our parable today, Jesus says the opposite of what some of his disciples might have expected. The disciples expected Jesus to say one thing, and he made the opposite point. In the last verse of chapter 19 of Matthew, Jesus says, "But many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first." That's the opposite of how we understand order, right? In our way of thinking, first is first and last is last. We think that's fair, right? You get in line first, you get the thing first. You show up last, and you're at the end of the line. We care a lot about fair, don't we? What is fair? Think about that for a minute. How do we define fair? The real dictionary definition is in accordance with the rules or standards. Inside, we probably think of fair as somebody getting what they deserve. And we have a pretty clear idea of what we think is fair or not fair. Let's look at that. Hey, Charlie, I made cookies. Do you want a treat?
Oh, yeah.
Sambo!
Yeah?
I made cookies. You want a treat, buddy?
Oh, yeah, thanks.
You can have both of them.
Oh, thanks. That's not fair.
Hey, bud, there's kind of a lot of work that needs done around the house, so I've got a proposal for you. How about if you do some of the work around the house, and I'll pay you $10. You in?
Okay.
All right. You could just... Hey, Charlie, you want to get in on this?
Okay.
Thank you both so much for all your hard work. Here you go, Charlie. And Sam, here you go.
But that's not fair.
I think we all have a pretty clear idea about what we think is fair and what we think isn't fair. At the point where we're at in Matthew chapter 19 and 20, Jesus is answering a question from Peter. Peter asked him, "We have left everything to follow you. What then will there be for us?" The disciples cared about being fair a lot like we care about being fair. They wanted a fair answer. They wanted to know that their sacrifice here on earth was going to be rewarded. They wanted to know that they had secured a special place at Jesus' right hand forever. And then Jesus heads into this parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who owned land. He went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to give them the usual pay for a day's work. Then he sent them into his vineyard. About 9 o'clock in the morning he went out again. He saw others standing in the market doing nothing. And he said to them, "You also go and work in my vineyard. I'll pay you what is right." So they went out. He went out again about noon, and at 3 o'clock he did the same thing. About 5 o'clock he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long and doing nothing?" "Because no one has hired us," they answered. He said to them, "You also go and work in my vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard spoke to the person who was in charge of the workers. He said, "Call the workers and give them their pay. Begin with the last ones I hired, and then go on to the first ones." The workers who were hired about 5 o'clock came. Each received the usual day's pay. So when those who were hired first came, they expected to receive more. But each of them also received the usual day's pay.
When they received it, they began to complain about the owner. "These people who were hired last worked only 1 hour," they said. "You've paid them the same as us. We've done most of the work and have been out in the hot sun all day." The owner answered one of them. "Friend," he said, "I am being fair to you. Didn't you agree to work for the usual day's pay? Take your money and go. I want to give the one I hired last the same pay I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Do you feel cheated because I gave so freely to the others?" So those who are last will be first, and those who are first will be last.
It's really important to know that the main point of this parable isn't that the landowner wasn't fair. The main point of the parable is grace, God's free gift that we don't deserve, that none of us deserve. A little more specifically, it's talking about the gift of eternal life and how no matter when you accept the gift, you get to claim it all. So whether you accept Jesus into your life when you're a kid and you live many years for Christ, or the day before you die, you still get the full gift of eternal life in heaven with Jesus. That's God's gift to us. All we have to do is be willing to get up and come when Jesus calls us to work in his field.